Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, thousands of students return to Metro Manila schools today for in-person classes. Also, groups of students lament that no vaccine, no classes policy. They say the government should consider weekly antigen testing instead. And later, the Education Department will appeal to the Comelec to increase the honoraria of teaching personnel in the 2022 elections. Education Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan joins us live. Select Metro Manila public schools are opening their doors to students today for the rollout of limited face-to-face classes. The Education Department says that all participating schools went through stringent preparations and will follow strict health protocols. Our AC Nichols joins us on the line. AC?
Yes, Pinky, around 2,000 basic education students are back in the classroom as 28 public schools in Metro Manila physically reopened today. DepEd and local officials are making their rounds to check the implementation of basic health protocols in participating schools. So far, so good. At the Pasig Elementary School, only 13 to 14 students are inside each classroom, and there's enough space for physical distancing. All windows and doors are open for proper ventilation. Other basic protocols are being done as well, including temperature checks and alcohol use. However, there are challenges for teachers as some students take off their masks from time to time, so that's something teachers have to keep a close eye on. Aside from the 28 schools in the NCR, there are over 170 schools in other regions that are also expected to join the pilot run for face-to-face classes beginning today. This is in addition to more than 100 schools that started in-person classes last month. DepEd Assistant Secretary Malcolm Garma says the pilot run is a success in general as no COVID case has been reported among participating schools so far. Pinky?
Thanks a lot, AC Nichols. Authorities are keeping a close eye on the Omicron coronavirus variant. Oh, AC, if you're still there, I wanted to ask you, how can this threat possibly affect the reopening of schools? We'll ask that. We'll try to get AC Nichols back on the line. Of course, Omicron, the Omicron variant. A question now on how this can possibly affect the limited face-to-face classes. So let's go straight to the source of the story. We have education. Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan, Usec, welcome to the source. Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Pinky, and to all your viewers.
This is going to be very exciting and probably raises some concern for the students, the teachers, the parents as well. So AC was telling us, Usec, no, there are 28 schools in Metro Manila that will participate in this limited face-to-face classes. Approximately, you're looking at about what? Is that correct? 2,000 students going to school?
For Metro Manila, yes, about 2,000, more than 2,000, 2,100 plus students are coming to school, majority of which are in the kindergarten to grade 3. No, that's 2,300, almost 2,400, Ms. Pinky.
Oh, okay. So
in all,
yes. So 2,300, and then I know I was asking you this before we went on air. Why was it focused on those kinder to grade 3 and senior high school students only?
Well, actually, most of of the public would find that counterintuitive that we start with the kindergarten to grade 3. They say that it will be more difficult to discipline them. But this is actually a recommendation from our public health experts that we consulted, including the Department of Health. Based on the data, it is this age group that have shown greater resilience to COVID, both in terms of being infected as well as the duration and the severity the symptoms. So they are the ones that would be safer to start with in the face-to-face classes. In fact, it was DepEd that appealed to allow senior high school, particularly those in tech walk, to be included. And so they allowed a limited number. But let me just clarify that this is only for the pilot phase. Our understanding with the Department of Health is that when we move to the expansion phase, we will cover all grade levels. This is really at the pilot phase so that we undertake greater precaution at this stage.
And when do you actually see or foresee all grades doing limited face-to-face classes?
Well, the pilot phase is intended, the Christmas break of the students will start on December 20. And so it has been a few weeks of experience, both in the preparation phase, the monitoring, and the adjustments that have to be made. And we are expected to submit our consolidated report to the Office of the President and also for consideration by the entire DepEd leadership as to the expansion phase. So we expect to complete our report of the pilot phase within the year before the close of the year, and that will be the basis for our recommendation on the expansion
for next year.
Even as we for next year, and even as we speak, the Secretary has already directed all schools nationwide, both public and private, in the basic education level, to already undergo the self-assessment for the school safety assessment tool that we have developed, which is also the basis for the preparations of these pilot schools. So far, we're closely monitoring, and in the last 2 weeks that we've started, the result has so far been favorable with respect to our ability to implement the protocols that we have jointly developed with the Department of Health.
So I see what you're saying here, because mid-November, limited face-to-face classes had begun, but obviously not in NCR. And it's just today, really, that NCR begins face-to-face classes. So this has obviously been happening in phases. So you said that generally the first salvo of the face-to-face mid-November was generally okay. What kind of concerns did you have back then that you needed to kind of adjust for the NCR opening of classes?
First is that in the first phase, NCR really still did not qualify because of the alert levels. And it was only later on when the COVID situation improved that it was made a possibility to start with NCR. And of course, it's very important that we are able to test how it is to do it in NCR because of its peculiar nature. One is the congestion. And of course, it has become the seat of the COVID cases over the months prior. So it is very important that we are able to see how it works in an area, highly urbanized area like NCR. So it will contribute very greatly to our report and to the decision making on the expansion phase, Ms. Pinky.
Opo. Usec, ilan po ang estudyante sa bawat classroom?
We are following the physical distancing protocol of at least 1 meter apart. In fact, it's 1 to 2 meters. And so we have reduced the class size to between 14 to 16. And probably in the senior high school, that can be increased to about 20. But that is really having or reducing in half the class size for every classroom to allow for the physical distancing
And
requirement.
who are qualified to do the in-person classes? Because how I understand it, obviously you have, let's say, from kinder to grade 3, that would be 14 to 16 students per classroom. So the rest, from my understanding, will still be doing remote learning.
Even those that are participating in the face-to-face classes are still doing this in blended form. We are not yet full schedule, and this is really prioritizing certain teaching and learning activities that can be maximized in in-person setting. So these are matters like specific or targeted assessments to validate the learning progress of the learners, to prioritize difficult to master learning competencies, and to identify those who would need closer intervention to ensure that they're able to advance in the learning competencies. In other words, this is meant to address the gaps that we are experiencing and the challenges that we are experiencing in pure distance learning, but it is still not full scale. So full scale. So the students are scheduled either in alternate weeks, or they have a morning and afternoon session depending. So it is still combined with distance learning. It's not full schedule.
Right. So
Face-to-face. In fact, we have reduced the time that the students are in school. It is only 3 hours for kindergarten and 4 hours for the higher grade levels.
Okay, we just need to take a very short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Education Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan. Usec, I just want to clarify, no? So sabi nyo, in one classroom, there are about 14 to 16 students. My question is, who are eligible, number one, to be doing the in-person classes? And what happens to those who are not doing the face-to-face classes? Are they going to be, is it going to be by shifting after 1 week, yung pong hindi naman nag face-to-face, sila po ang papasok naman? What is the policy?
Well, with all students within a grade level are eligible to, if they are in a school na kasama dito sa pilot. But our framework is one of shared responsibility. So, kailangan nito ng consent ng parents. So yung mga makakalahok ay yung mga pinapayagan ng kanilang mga magulang. But our experience in the schools, in the pilot schools, ay very strong in support ng parents. So most of the students are participating. So kailangan na magkaroon ng shifting, as you mentioned. It can be either a morning and afternoon shift to accommodate yung mga learners for that grade levels. And because there are classrooms that are not in use for the higher grade levels of 4 to 6 and even higher if it's an integrated school, then there's sufficient space.
Right. There are available classrooms.
Yes, there are available classrooms.
But you
of
said,
course, this
is it up to the schools to do this? What is the policy of DepEd? Is DepEd saying that all those who are eligible because their parents allow them to go to school should be able to at some point do face-to-face classes, or again, it will be really up to the school concerned?
Everyone should have an equal opportunity for access. May mga pagkakataon that we have to really have a smaller number if that's a decision that needs to be made, and that is when certain prioritization standards come into play. Halimbawa ay those, of course, those with the greatest need for face-to-face classes. So those that are less able to cope, or households with less resources to support pure distance learning, so they become the priorities. But so far, it has not come into play dito sa pilot. As I mentioned, all of the students with the consent of the parents are accommodated in the pilot classes. This will become an issue when we do for all the grade levels, because then the classroom availability will be a consideration. And one possibility there is that we do alternating weeks for the students.
I see.
It will be difficult to accommodate a single class on a morning and afternoon session when we go for full scale of all grade levels.
Yeah, kasi Usec papasok na yung grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, and so on. So wala na pong available na classrooms. But right now, because this is just kinder to grade 3 and senior high school, the objective really is for those who want to do in-person should be able to do it at some point within the 2 weeks.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And of course, not losing sight of the fact na itong pilot na ito is meant for us to really have a hands-on experience. All stakeholders that are involved in the requirements for the preparation, the monitoring, and how to handle contingencies that happen are anticipated.
And in this 2 weeks, because we're talking about also senior high school, is there a requirement for them, for the senior high school students, to be vaccinated?
Not yet. For the students, it's not a requirement. It's encouraged. It is a requirement for teachers and non-teaching personnel that they are vaccinated to be able to go in person and meet the students. Of course, we are banking on the continued progression of the vaccination rollout for the school-age children, which will be a plus factor, certainly, and supportive of the expansion phase. But it is not a requirement that the children are vaccinated to participate. And this is why we are very stringent with respect to the observance of the protocols. These are meant to really provide them the protection, the layers of protection from the home to and from travel to school and in the school premises.
Yeah, and when we're talking about those safety protocols, I'm seeing and I'm also reading some reports that in some schools there are plastic barriers, and other schools, they don't really believe in that. They believe more so in, obviously, ventilation and even UV light. Is there a requirement from the DepEd regarding, say, plastic barriers? Do they have to be put in place here in NCR?
Well, actually, the plastic barriers is an addition, is a localized addition, because it is not included in the guidelines that we issued. Plastic barriers, even in various settings, are required in very close premises and with limited physical distancing. But we can understand why this was resorted to. As I mentioned, it's a shared responsibility. There are coordination with local government units and the parents, and some of the areas would want this additional protection as they understand it. But we have already provided the communication given to us by DOH with respect to the considerations, and you mentioned some of them. It can impede ventilation. It has also been seen among the challenges that it also impedes the ability of the teacher and the students to see clearly what's on the blackboard, things like that, and hearing. So it can be an impediment to the learning process. And so this could be one of the adjustments as a policy-wide, but for now we have just given the advisory and the communication from the OH for adjustments to be made. But certainly this will be part of the evaluation of the pilot face-to-face as we make the refinements for the guidelines and protocols for the expanded phase.
And the next question would be, are the students going to be tested regularly? But we need to take a very short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Education Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan. So, Usec, my question prior to the break, are the students going to be tested regularly?
Well, we follow the testing protocol of the Department of Health. And batay sa Department of Health, ang pinakamabisa pa rin screening is symptom and exposure screening, and that is what we are doing. So they are screened for any symptoms at home and in school, and they are also screened based on any known exposure. And then testing will be a consequence of what may be found in such type of screening. So it is not a primary screening tool dito sa ating face-to-face classes. But we do not object to, there are times when, let's say, the local government unit would impose in the area as a screening protocol that includes testing, then we allow that. That is what happened, for example, in Zambales when we had a deferment because there are some teachers who tested positive for antigen testing, but on confirmatory test, they tested negative. And so that's one of the complications actually that happens with testing-based screening. Sometimes you get either false positive or can be false negative. So our protocols now are based on symptom and exposure-based screening, Ms. Pinky.
Hence, one will only be tested if one exhibits any symptoms related to COVID. Tsaka lang po siya.
Or known exposure, Ms. Pinky. And then there are also referral protocols. But in areas where there is a surge in COVID, and this will be reflected anyway doon sa alert level. Halimbawa, a certain locality experiences a surge, that will affect the conduct of our face-to-face classes, and that can also affect the testing protocol in the area. But precisely, we are doing this in areas with low risk levels, the alert levels that are low and minimal risk, and therefore our testing protocol are based on screening and symptom. Based on symptom and exposure-based screening.
Very quickly, Usec, there was a protest of a group of teachers wanting their and demanding their overtime pay from 2020 to 2021. What is the reaction, or how is the DepEd addressing this?
Well, that matter has been addressed already. And our position is very clear. We recognize the extra time that they were compelled to work on weekends and holidays. But yung kinakount nila kasi na overtime is supposedly what is in excess of the school calendar of 220 days. But they were actually paid their regular salaries during the time that they were working beyond the school calendar of 220 days. Yung 220 days is not a required or the limit for a working day for a teacher, but rather that was passed to provide for how much instructional time are needed by the students. So it is not really a labor legislation, yung 220 school calendar days by the law. So hindi, ang aming legal position dyan ay hindi yun maaring maging batayan for overtime, because they were actually being paid during the time that they were working on those school days in excess of 220 calendar days.
Okay, Education Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan. Sir, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you very much
Thank you.
as well, Ms. Pinky.
Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.